3 months after the last Kethamori force had been erased from existence, Ambassador Hyunwoo Park walked into the Federation Council chambers for the first time since the crisis began. The circular room looked exactly the same as it had for decades, with representatives from dozens of species seated around the massive table. But the atmosphere was completely different. Where once there had been casual chatter and easy laughter before meetings, now there was respectful silence. Where alien representatives had once barely acknowledged the human ambassador's presence, now every eye in the room followed his movements with careful attention. Park took his seat at the human section of the table, the same chair he had occupied for 15 years. But he noticed that the chairs on either side of him, previously occupied by minor species representatives, were now empty. No one wanted to sit too close to the humans anymore. "The Federation Council will come to order," announced the council leader, the tall tree-like being whose many arms trembled slightly as he spoke. "We gather today to address territorial disputes in the Kepler sector between the Vorthak Empire and the Nexari Consortium." It was the same type of dispute that Park had mediated hundreds of times before. Two species claiming the same resources, both preparing for conflict, both expecting humans to find a peaceful solution. But this time was different. Supreme Commander Vexhai of the Vorthak stood to present his people's case, but his usual aggressive posturing was gone. Instead of demanding and threatening, he spoke carefully and respectfully. "The Vorthak Empire respectfully submits its territorial claims to human arbitration," he said, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "We acknowledge that Ambassador Park's wisdom in these matters surpasses our own, and we will accept whatever resolution he deems appropriate for galactic peace." Trade Minister Nexolis of the Nexari was even more deferential. "The Nexari Consortium places complete faith in human judgment. We request only that Ambassador Park consider our position with his customary fairness and wisdom." Park listened to both presentations with the same calm attention he had always shown. When they finished, he stood to speak. "You're afraid of us now," he said quietly, his words carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "Both of you. All of you. You speak of wisdom and fairness, but what you really mean is that you're terrified of what might happen if you displease humanity." The silence that followed was deafening. Several alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one denied his words. "You shouldn't be afraid," Park continued, his voice gentle but firm. "We are exactly who we always claimed, to be peacekeepers. We have always preferred negotiation to violence, cooperation to conflict. The only difference is that now you understand what we're willing to do to maintain that peace." He activated a holographic display showing the disputed territory. The Kepler sector contains 17 asteroid fields rich in rare minerals. The Vorthak claimed territorial rights based on historical presence. The Nexari claim commercial rights based on existing mining operations. Park paused, looking around the room at faces that watched his every expression with nervous attention. "My suggestion is the same as it would have been 3 months ago. Divide the sector into zones. The Vorthak receive exclusive rights to 8 asteroid fields for military mining operations. The Nexari receive exclusive rights to 8 fields for commercial extraction. The remaining field becomes jointly administered with profits shared equally between both species." Supreme Commander Vexhai nodded eagerly. "This solution is perfectly acceptable to the Vorthak Empire." Trade Minister Nexolis was equally quick to agree. "The Nexari Consortium embraces this wise resolution completely. The dispute that might once have taken weeks of negotiation was resolved in minutes. Both species signed the agreement immediately, neither wanting to risk appearing difficult or unreasonable to human eyes." As the meeting ended and the alien representatives filed out of the chamber, Park remained seated, lost in thought. The tree-like council leader approached him hesitantly. "Ambassador Park," the alien said, his many arms gesturing nervously. "May I ask you a question?" "Of course. Your species, were you always planning for something like the Kethamori? Even from the beginning of your Federation membership?" Park considered the question carefully. "We weren't planning for the Kethamori specifically. We were planning for the possibility that peaceful coexistence might someday fail. Every species that joins a community has a responsibility to protect that community if it's threatened. But the weapons you used, the technology you developed, it must have taken centuries of secret preparation. 2 centuries, Park confirmed. We spent 200 years learning everything we could about our neighbors, not to harm them, but to understand how to defend them if necessary. We studied your cultures, your technologies, your strengths and weaknesses, always hoping we would never need to use that knowledge. The council leader was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that was haunting every species in the galaxy. What if one of the Federation species someday threatens galactic peace? What would happen to them? Park's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. The same thing that happened to the Kethmori. We don't make distinctions between threats based on where they come from or how long we've known them. A threat to galactic peace is a threat to galactic peace. Captain Ji-won Kim was back aboard the Harmony, patrolling the neutral zones and helping maintain order in the aftermath of the crisis. But her job had become almost effortless. Disputes that once required days of careful negotiation now ended the moment she offered human mediation. "Captain," reported her communications officer, "we're receiving a distress call from a Thalorian merchant vessel. They're reporting that their ship has been boarded by pirates." Kim sighed. Pirates had been a persistent problem in the outer systems for decades, preying on merchant ships and avoiding Federation patrols. The various species' navies had never been able to coordinate effectively enough to stop them. "Set course for the Thalorian vessel," she ordered, "and send a message to the pirate ship." "What should the message say, Captain?" "Tell them this. Unknown vessel, you are engaging in activities that threaten galactic peace and commerce. Cease your actions immediately and surrender to Federation authority. This is your only warning." The response came back within minutes. "We surrender. Please don't hurt us. We're jettisoning all stolen goods and shutting down our weapons. Please don't send us to wherever you sent the Kethmori." Kim couldn't help but smile slightly. For decades, pirates had ignored Federation warnings because they knew most species' militaries were too uncoordinated to pose a real threat. Now the mere possibility of human intervention was enough to make hardened criminals surrender without a fight. Dr. Taehyung Lee published the complete results of his xenobiology research in a scientific journal that was distributed throughout Federation space. The publication was presented as a comprehensive medical reference, designed to help doctors treat patients from different species more effectively. Every government in the galaxy understood what they were really reading: a detailed manual of biological vulnerabilities that could be exploited if any species ever threatened galactic stability. The Vorthak respiratory system is particularly sensitive to certain atmospheric changes, one section noted clinically. Exposure to elevated levels of compound XJ7 would cause immediate unconsciousness in 99.7% of the population. Nexari neural pathways show unusual vulnerability to specific electromagnetic frequencies, another section observed. Brief exposure to properly calibrated signals could cause temporary paralysis across their entire species. Similar weaknesses were documented for every Federation member. The information was presented as medical knowledge, but the implications were clear. Humanity knew exactly how to neutralize any species that might threaten galactic peace, and they could do it without causing permanent harm. The message was both reassuring and terrifying. Reassuring because it showed that humanity preferred non-lethal solutions when possible. Terrifying because it demonstrated just how thoroughly they had studied everyone around them. Admiral Minji Choi formally disbanded the Human Defense Initiative during a ceremony attended by military leaders from every Federation species. In its place, she established the Galactic Peace Enforcement Division, with human officers in all command positions. For 2 centuries, she told the assembled crowd, humanity has worked to maintain peace through diplomacy and cooperation. That policy has not changed. What has changed is our willingness to use other methods when diplomacy fails. She gestured to the mixed crowd of human and alien officers. The Galactic Peace Enforcement Division welcomes personnel from all Federation species. You will train alongside human officers, learn to use human equipment, and work under human command structure. In return, You will help us maintain the peace that protects all our civilizations. The response was overwhelming. Every Federation species sent their best officers to train with human forces. They wanted to be part of the organization that had eliminated the greatest threat in galactic history. But more than that, they wanted to make sure they stayed on humanity's good side. Admiral Yuna Han stood before the Federation Council. But this time the meeting was very different from the desperate war councils of previous weeks. The alien representatives sat in stunned silence, still trying to process what they had witnessed. The unstoppable Keth Mori had not only been stopped, but completely destroyed by the same humans they had all dismissed as harmless peacekeepers. "You're wondering how we did it," Admiral Han said, her voice calm but carrying an authority that none of the aliens had heard from humans before. "You're wondering how we knew about the Keth Mori before they arrived. You're wondering how we built weapons that could destroy enemies who seemed invincible." She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy, with thousands of points of light marking human installations. "For 2 centuries you have known us as diplomats, traders, researchers, and medical personnel. This was all true, but what you didn't know was that every human in the galaxy has been part of the most comprehensive intelligence and military preparation operation in galactic history." Supreme Commander Vexhai of the Vorthak leaned forward, his red eyes wide, with shock. "You mean every human was a spy?" "Not spies," Admiral Han corrected. "Students. We came to learn from you, to understand you, to appreciate your cultures and your capabilities. But we also came to understand how to protect ourselves and our allies if peaceful coexistence ever failed." She gestured, and the display showed detailed analyses of every Federation species' military capabilities, biological structures, and social organizations. Every diplomatic mission studied your political systems. Every trade negotiation analyzed your economic vulnerabilities. Every cultural exchange mapped your social hierarchies. Every medical cooperation program identified your biological weaknesses. We did this not to harm you, but to ensure we could defend you if necessary. Counselor Thalara's crystalline body flickered with nervous patterns of light. "But the weapons you used against the Keth Mori, they were beyond anything we thought possible." Admiral Han smiled, and for the first time the aliens saw something predatory in that expression. "You wondered why humans were so good at preventing conflicts. The answer is simple. We had already calculated how to end every possible threat to galactic peace. We understood war better than any of you, because we had studied it from every angle, prepared for it in every detail, and developed solutions that you couldn't imagine." The display changed to show human fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The scope was staggering. Human ships were positioned near every major world, every trade route, every strategic resource. They had been there for decades, invisible and patient. "The Keth Mori made the same mistake you did," Admiral Han continued. "They confused our desire for peace with weakness. They thought that because we chose diplomacy, we were incapable of warfare. They were wrong." Commander Kyung-Soo Bae was leading the systematic hunt for remaining Keth Mori forces when he made a discovery that changed everything. His ship, the UES Silent Judgment, had been tracking temporal energy signatures throughout the outer rim when his sensors detected something unexpected. "Admiral Choi," he reported through secure channels, "we've found their base of operations. It's not just a fleet. It's a massive temporal facility hidden in a pocket dimension adjacent to our galaxy." The facility was enormous, larger than some solar systems. It contained thousands of Keth Mori ships, billions of their soldiers, and the temporal technology that had allowed them to travel back from the future. It was their entire civilization, compressed into a single location outside normal space-time. "How many are we looking at?" Admiral Choi asked. "Conservative estimate, 10 billion Keth Mori, supported by automated systems that could produce unlimited reinforcements. This isn't just an invasion force, Admiral. This is their entire species trying to restart the universe by eliminating everyone else." Admiral Choi was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke with the cold determination that had made her the most feared military commander in human history. "Commander Bae, you are authorized to use the Omega Protocol." The Omega Protocol was humanity's most classified military option, developed in absolute secrecy over the past 50 years. It had never been tested, never been discussed in official channels, and its very existence was known only to a handful of human leaders. Dr. Minji Chen, the lead physicist on the project, had once described it as the ultimate expression of human patience. The weapon required decades of preparation, massive amounts of exotic matter, and precise calculations that pushed the limits of quantum mathematics. Its purpose was simple: to completely remove a target from existence across all possible timelines and dimensions. The beautiful irony, Dr. Chen had explained to Admiral Choi, is that we're using temporal technology to ensure the Kethomori never existed in any timeline. They came back to prevent the future they knew. Instead, we're going to make sure they never have a past to come back from. Commander Bay positioned his ship at the calculated firing point and began the activation sequence. The weapon required 17 hours to charge, during which time human forces throughout the galaxy took defensive positions. They expected the Kethomori to detect the energy buildup and launch a desperate final attack. Instead, the Kethomori did something that surprised everyone. They tried to surrender. "Human vessels," came a transmission from the Pocket Dimension facility. "This is Supreme Leader Kethmore of the Temporal Restoration Project. We request immediate ceasefire and negotiation of terms." General Soyoung Park, speaking for all human forces, responded with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Supreme Leader Kethmore, your species has had two opportunities for peace. The first was when you arrived in our galaxy and chose extermination over negotiation. The second was when you requested a ceasefire after discovering that your intended victims could fight back. You rejected the first opportunity and have forfeited the right to the second." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "You came here to correct what you saw as a mistake in galactic development. We are simply correcting the mistake of your existence." The Omega Protocol fired exactly 17 hours and 37 minutes after Commander Bay began the charging sequence. The weapon created a cascade effect that rippled backwards and forwards through time, reaching into every dimension where the Kethomori had ever existed. From the perspective of the watching galaxy, it appeared that the Kethomori had simply never been. Their attacks on Federation worlds became historical events that had never happened. The destroyed planets were suddenly restored to their previous state, with their populations alive and unaware that they had ever been in danger. Reality rewrote itself around the absence of the Kethomori threat. The only evidence that they had ever existed was in the memories of those who had fought them, and in the recorded communications from the brief conflict. Captain Ji-won Kim, back aboard the Harmony, was mediating another territorial dispute when she received the confirmation that the Omega Protocol had been successful. The same Vorthak and Nexari fleets that had been evacuating from Kethomori attacks were now arguing about mining rights again, completely unaware of how close they had come to extinction. But this time, when Captain Kim suggested a compromise, both alien commanders agreed immediately. Word of humanity's military capabilities had spread throughout the galaxy faster than the timeline corrections could erase memories. "Of course, Captain Kim," said Admiral Korex of the Vorthak fleet, his voice much more respectful than it had been in previous negotiations. "Your wisdom in these matters is unquestionable." Commander Sil-Ara of the Nexari was even more direct. "Whatever terms you suggest will be acceptable to the consortium. We have complete faith in human judgment regarding matters of galactic peace." The change in attitude was universal. Every Federation species now understood that when humans suggested diplomatic solutions, those suggestions carried the implicit backing of the most advanced military force in galactic history. Dr. Jiho Kang published his research on temporal mechanics, including detailed analyses of Kethomori technology and the theoretical foundations of the Omega Protocol. The publication was presented as pure scientific research, but everyone understood the underlying message. Humanity had developed the ability to erase entire species from existence across all timelines. "The implications are staggering," he wrote in his conclusion. "We now possess the theoretical framework to eliminate any threat to galactic stability by ensuring it never existed in the first place. This capability comes with enormous responsibility and should only be used against existential threats to all sapient life." The galaxy read between the lines. Humanity could delete anyone from existence, but they would only use this power to protect everyone from threats that endangered galactic civilization itself. Admiral Choi disbanded the Human Defense Initiative and replaced it with the Galactic Peace Enforcement Division. The other Federation species were invited to participate, but under human command structure and using human-designed equipment. Most species accepted eagerly. They had seen what happened to those who threatened galactic peace, and they wanted to be on the side that controlled such devastating power. The first Kethmori fleet to enter human space was massive beyond imagination. 47 ships, each one larger than the biggest Federation dreadnought, moved through the darkness between stars with the confidence of apex predators that had never faced real resistance. Their destination was the human colony of New Beijing, home to 12 million civilians. Intelligence reports suggested it would be an easy target. Humans had no real military presence, only their pathetic defense coordinators and research stations. The fleet expected to complete the extermination within 6 hours and move on to the next system. The galaxy watched through long-range sensors, expecting to witness humanity's destruction and the end of the Federation's last hope for peaceful resolution. News crews from a dozen species positioned themselves at safe distances to record the final proof that negotiation was useless against the Kethmori threat. Instead, they recorded something that changed their understanding of human nature forever. The Kethmori fleet entered the New Beijing system and immediately began scanning for human life signs. Their sensors detected millions of targets scattered across the planet and throughout the orbital facilities. Easy prey, just like always. Then, between one sensor sweep and the next, the entire fleet simply vanished. Not destroyed in battle. Not driven away by superior firepower. They just disappeared, as if they had never existed at all. 47. Massive warships and their crews gone without a trace, without a distress call, without even debris to mark their passing. The news crews scrambled to understand what they had witnessed. Their sensors showed empty space where moments before there had been the most powerful invasion force in galactic history. From the command deck of the UES Retribution, Captain Minho Jung activated broadcasting systems that reached every corner of the galaxy. His ship appeared on sensors for the first time despite having been present in the system all along. "To our Federation allies," he said, his voice calm and professional, "for 2 centuries, you have known us as peacekeepers. This was not deception, it was patience. We kept the peace because we understood the alternative." As he spoke, more human ships began appearing throughout the system. They materialized from behind cloaking fields that made Federation stealth. Technology looked primitive. Dozens of vessels that had been invisible moments before now showed themselves, surrounding the space where the Kethmori fleet had been. "You wondered why humans were so good at preventing conflicts," Captain Jung continued. "The answer is simple. We had already calculated how to end every possible threat to galactic peace, permanently. The galaxy's reaction was immediate and profound. Every Federation communication channel exploded with panicked chatter. Species that had spent decades calling humans soft and naive suddenly found themselves trying to understand how those same humans had made an unstoppable invasion fleet disappear. On the Vorthak flagship, Supreme Commander Vexhai stared at his tactical displays in shock. "How?" he demanded of his sensor operators. "How did they destroy 47 capital ships without firing a single shot that we could detect?" His chief technician's voice was shaking. "Sir, we're analyzing the quantum resonance patterns from the engagement area. The reading suggests some form of dimensional displacement weapon. The entire Kethmori fleet appears to have been transported out of normal spacetime." "Transported where?" "Unknown, sir. The energy signature suggests they might have been sent several billion years into the future, to a time when the universe is already dead." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Sun-Hee Lim was explaining humanity's real technological capabilities to a very select audience of human military leaders. The dimensional displacement cannon was inspired by Kethmori technology, she reported, but we've improved on their design. While they use temporal displacement for travel, we've weaponized it for removal. Anything caught in the field gets sent so far into the future that they arrive after the heat death of the universe. Admiral Choi nodded approvingly. Poetic justice. They wanted to eliminate us to save the future. Instead, we've sent them to a future where there's nothing left to save. The beautiful part, Dr. Lim continued, is that the weapon is completely undetectable until activation. To outside observers, it looks like the targets simply ceased to exist. The second Kethmori fleet arrived at human space 3 days later. This force was even larger than the first. 68 ships, including several massive vessels that were apparently mobile planets converted into weapons platforms. Captain Woo Jin Cho was waiting for them aboard the UES Patience Rewarded, a ship that shouldn't have existed according to any known laws of physics. Its hull seemed to bend light around itself, and its weapon systems were based on principles that Federation scientists claimed were impossible. The Kethmori fleet approached with more caution this time. They had received automated distress signals from their missing ships just before the signals cut off. They knew something had happened, but their arrogance made them believe they could handle whatever primitive trap the humans had set. Captain Cho didn't waste time with warnings or negotiations. The moment the alien fleet entered weapons range, he gave a simple order: fire. The battle lasted 17 seconds. The weapons that emerged from human ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Beams of energy that ignored shields, and armor, missiles that could track targets through dimensional phase shifts, and defensive systems that turned enemy weapons against themselves. The Kethmori tried to use their signature tactic of phasing between dimensions to escape. Instead, they found that human weapons could follow them into whatever dimensional space they fled to. They tried to use their superior numbers to overwhelm individual human ships. Instead, they discovered that each human vessel was more powerful than their entire fleet combined. When the 17 seconds were over, 68 Kethmori warships had been reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Not one human ship showed even minor damage. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as Captain Cho broadcast a message to the surviving alien forces in the area. This is Captain Woo Jin Cho of the Human Defense Force. Message to any Kethmori vessels monitoring this frequency. Your technological superiority is an illusion based on our previous restraint. Your temporal displacement gives you knowledge of a future that no longer exists, because we have changed the fundamental nature of this conflict. Withdraw from Federation space immediately, or face complete annihilation. The response came 6 hours later, on all Federation communication channels. It was the first time the Kethmori had attempted diplomacy since their arrival. Human vessels, this is Fleet Commander Kethvex of the Temporal Cleansing Force. We propose immediate cessation of hostilities and negotiation of terms for coexistence. The message sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The unstoppable force of extermination that had driven entire species to despair was asking for mercy from the same humans they had all considered harmless pacifists. General Soyoung Park, who was revealed to be Ambassador Hyunwoo Park's sister, replied on behalf of humanity. The family connection was just one of many secrets the galaxy was learning about their peaceful neighbors. Fleet Commander Kethvex, you had your opportunity for peaceful coexistence. Every species in this galaxy extended offers of negotiation. When you first arrived, you chose extermination over diplomacy. We are simply granting your original request, though not in the way you intended. As she spoke, human fleets throughout the galaxy began revealing themselves. Ships emerged from stealth in every major system, around every alien world, near every space station. The scope of the human military presence was staggering. They had been everywhere, watching everything, ready for this moment for over 2 centuries. You see, General Park continued, you made the same mistake that our Federation allies made. You confused our desire for peace with an inability to wage war. You studied our future history and learned how we would respond to various threats. But the humans you studied in your timeline were not the humans you face now. We have had 200 years to prepare specifically for you. The revelation that humanity had somehow known about the Kethmori threat decades before their arrival sent the Federation into chaos. Every alien government began reviewing their interactions with human diplomats. wondering what other secrets had been hidden behind polite smiles and peaceful intentions. On the Nexari trade station Golden Exchange, Trade Minister Nexolis was reviewing records of human economic activities over the past century. They weren't just trading with us, he told his staff, his voice filled with awe and terror. Every purchase they made, every resource they requested, every trade agreement they negotiated, it was all preparation for building a military that could fight enemies we didn't even know existed. Similar discoveries were happening throughout Federation space. The Thalorians realized that human energy research had been focused on developing weapons that could disrupt their crystalline biology. The Vorthak found that human cultural exchanges had included detailed studies of their warrior psychology and command structures. Every species discovered that their peaceful human neighbors had spent decades quietly identifying their weaknesses and developing countermeasures. The Emergency War Council meeting aboard the neutral station Unity was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Representatives from every Federation species sat around a massive circular table, their faces showing various expressions of fear, desperation, and barely controlled panic. The Kethmori had consumed 12 star systems in the past month. Entire civilizations had been wiped out in hours, leaving behind empty worlds and silent space stations. The Federation's combined fleets had proven completely useless against an enemy that could appear and disappear at will. General Dongyuk Nam represented humanity at the meeting. He was a quiet man with gray hair and calm eyes, wearing a simple blue uniform without the flashy decorations that other species favored. To the alien representatives, he looked like exactly what they expected from humans. Peaceful, diplomatic, and probably not very useful in a real war. Supreme Commander Vexhai of the Vorthak slammed his armored fist on the table, making several smaller aliens jump. "We need desperate measures," he growled. "Ancient weapons, forbidden technologies, anything that might slow these monsters down." The Thalorian crystal archives contain references to weapons from the First Galactic War, offered Counselor Thalara, her crystalline body flickering with nervous energy. "Devices that could destroy entire solar systems. Perhaps we should consider awakening them." "Even if we could find such weapons," said Trade Minister Nexolis, "they would take decades to rebuild. We have weeks at most before the Kethmori reach the core worlds." The discussion continued for hours, growing more desperate and less practical with each passing minute. Some representatives suggested fleeing to other galaxies. Others proposed surrendering and hoping the Kethmori might show mercy to those who didn't resist. A few even suggested sacrificing entire species as a delay tactic. It was during this discussion that Supreme Commander Vexhai made a suggestion that changed everything. "Perhaps," he said, not looking at General Nam, "we should consider using human space as a strategic delay zone. Their worlds are along the most likely invasion route. If we evacuate their population to safer areas, we could use their territory to slow the enemy advance while we prepare our real defenses." The table went silent. Several alien representatives nodded thoughtfully, as if this was a reasonable military strategy. They were suggesting using humanity's entire civilization as bait to buy time for species that actually knew how to fight. General Nam didn't speak immediately. He sat quietly for several long seconds, his calm expression unchanged. But those few humans who knew him well would have recognized the slight narrowing of his eyes, the almost invisible tightening of his jaw. When he finally spoke, his voice was still perfectly polite and diplomatic. "That's an interesting tactical suggestion, Supreme Commander. Of course, we would need time to evacuate our civilians properly. Mass population movements are complex operations that require careful planning." "How much time would you need?" asked Counselor Thalara. "Oh, perhaps 6 weeks for full evacuation," General Nam replied. "Maybe 8 if we want to do it properly without casualties." The alien representatives exchanged glances. They were thinking the same thing. Humans were so naive about military realities that they didn't even understand they were being sacrificed. They thought this was actually a rescue operation. 6 weeks should be sufficient, Supreme Commander, Vexhai decided. "Begin your evacuations immediately. We'll coordinate our fleets to provide cover during the withdrawal." After the meeting ended, General Nam returned to his private quarters and activated a secure communication channel. Within minutes, he was speaking directly to Admiral Minji Choi on Earth. "They want to sacrifice our entire civilization as a speed bump," he reported, his diplomatic mask finally slipping to show cold anger underneath. "I expected as much," Admiral Choi replied. "How long did you buy us?" 6 to 8 weeks for evacuation procedures." Admiral Choi actually laughed. "Perfect. That's exactly how long we need to implement Protocol Nightfall. Begin the evacuation, General, but make sure our people understand they're not running away from the fight. They're moving into position for it." Captain Yoonji Song received her new orders while commanding a convoy of human civilian ships near the frontier world of New Geneva. To any outside observer, she appeared to be conducting a standard humanitarian evacuation, moving thousands of human families away from the advancing Kethmori threat. In reality, she was implementing the most sophisticated military deployment in galactic history. "Civilian transport, Aurora. Adjust your course by 2 degrees, she instructed. "Head for the asteroid field at coordinates 847.3 by 291.7. "Understood, Captain Song. Any particular reason for the detour?" "Just a standard safety precaution," she replied, knowing that the Aurora was actually carrying 300 military engineers disguised as refugee families. The asteroid field contained a hidden weapons platform that had been under construction for 50 years. Similar evacuations were happening throughout human space. To the galaxy, it looked like humanity was finally abandoning their hopeless frontier worlds and retreating to safety. What they didn't see was that every refugee ship was actually a troop transport. Every evacuation convoy was a supply line. And every abandoned world was being prepared for something the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Jiho Kang made his disturbing discovery about the Kethmori's true nature while studying temporal energy readings from their attack sites. He was working in a laboratory hidden beneath what appeared to be a medical research station, surrounded by equipment that officially didn't exist. "Admiral," he reported during his daily briefing with Admiral Choi, "I've figured out why the Kethmori are so advanced and why they're doing this. Tell me." "They're not from another part of space, they're from another time. Our time, but billions of years in the future. They've lived through the heat death of our universe." Admiral Choi leaned forward. "Go on." "Based on the quantum signatures I'm detecting, they believe that current galactic civilization will trigger cosmic events that lead to universal collapse. They've traveled back in time to prevent those events by eliminating all sapient life before it can develop the technology they think caused the problem. So they're trying to save the universe by committing genocide." "Essentially, yes. But here's the interesting part, Admiral. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's specialized for extermination. They've spent eons developing ways to kill efficiently, but they've lost the ability to adapt quickly to unexpected situations." Admiral Choi smiled that cold smile, again. "And they certainly won't be expecting us to fight back effectively." "Exactly. They've studied our future history. They know how every current galactic species will respond to threats, but we're not responding the way we did in their timeline. While the rest of the galaxy fractured and panicked, humanity quietly continued their humanitarian work. Human medical ships appeared at refugee centers throughout Federation space, offering aid and comfort to displaced populations. What the aliens didn't realize was that these ships were also deploying sensor networks, weapons platforms, and communication relays. Human diplomatic vessels patrolled neutral zones, helping coordinate between different species evacuation efforts. In reality, they were mapping every military installation, government facility, and strategic resource in Federation space. Human research stations shared their scientific data freely with anyone who asked. The data they shared was real and helpful. The data they kept to themselves included detailed analyses of every Federation species' biological weaknesses, psychological profiles of their leadership, and complete blueprints of their military technology. Commander, Woojin Cho was overseeing the evacuation of the human colony, World Haven's Rest, when his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. A Kethemori scout ship was approaching the system, moving with the casual arrogance of a predator that had never encountered real resistance. All civilian ships maintain evacuation procedures, he broadcast on open channels. Do not deviate from your assigned routes. Then he switched to a secure military frequency. This is Commander Cho to all Nightfall units in system. Unknown contact approaching, weapons free, repeat, weapons free. The response came from Captain Sun-Hee Lim, commander of what appeared to be a civilian medical vessel. Understood, Commander. Medical ship Dancing Light is moving to assist with evacuation. To any observer, it looked like a hospital ship changing course to help with refugee operations. In reality, the Dancing Light was humanity's most advanced stealth warship, disguised with holographic projectors and false sensor readings. The Kethmori scout ship entered the system and immediately began scanning for life signs to eliminate. Its sensors detected thousands of humans in the process of evacuation. Easy targets, defenseless civilians. The ship moved toward the largest concentration of evacuation vessels, preparing to demonstrate once again that resistance was futile. It never saw the Dancing Light coming. The human ship's weapons were unlike anything in the Federation databases. They had been developed in secret over 2 centuries, based on technology reverse-engineered from every alien species humanity had ever peacefully studied. The beam that struck the Kethmori vessel was designed specifically to penetrate phase-shifting defenses. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the Vorthak frontier world of Kekstar. The planet had a population of 8 million Vorthak warriors and their families. It was defended by 3 orbital battle stations and a fleet of 200 warships. The planet itself was covered in military bases and weapon factories. Then, in the space of 4 hours, every living thing on Kekstar died, not destroyed in battle, not conquered by invasion, simply dead. The orbital stations still worked. The ships were undamaged. The buildings were intact. But every Vorthak on the planet and in the fleet had collapsed and died at the same time, as if life itself had just stopped working. The only evidence of what had happened was a single ship detected, leaving the system. It was unlike anything in the Federation databases. The ship seemed to bend light around itself, making it hard to see clearly. It moved without any visible engine trail, and it ignored all attempts at communication. Commander Seojin Yoon was on patrol duty in the Outer Rim when the distress signal reached her ship, the Silent Observer. Her orders were to investigate and report back, but to avoid direct contact with whatever had destroyed Kekstar. "Captain," said her sensor officer, Lieutenant Yoonji Song, "I'm picking up that unknown ship signature. Distance, 3 light hours, and closing." Seojin felt her blood run cold. 3 light hours meant the alien ship would reach them in minutes if it maintained its current speed. "All stop," she ordered. "Cut all power except life support. Make us look like a dead Hulk floating in space." The bridge went dark except for the dim red emergency lights. Through the darkness, they watched their sensors track the approaching ship. As it got closer, they could see that it was massive, at least twice the size of the largest Federation dreadnought. But what made it truly terrifying was how it seemed to phase in and out of reality, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, as if it existed in multiple dimensions at once. The ship passed within 1,000 kilometers of the Silent Observer, close enough that they could see details on its hull. The surface looked organic rather than mechanical, like it had been grown rather than built. Strange symbols covered the sides, symbols that seemed to move and change when you weren't looking directly at them. Then the ship was gone, vanishing into the darkness between stars. "Did we get recordings?" Seojin whispered. "Everything, Captain," Lieutenant Song replied, her voice shaking. "But I don't think our computers understand what they just recorded." When the Silent Observer returned to Federation space, the recordings caused panic throughout the galaxy. The ship they had seen didn't match any known technology. The way it moved suggested understanding of physics that the Federation's best scientists couldn't explain, and most terrifying of all, it had completely ignored them, as if they weren't even worth noticing. 3 more Vorthak worlds died in the following week. Then 2 Nexari trade stations. Then a Thalorian crystal farm that had been growing energy crystals for 1,000 years. Always the same pattern. Everything technological left intact, every living thing dead. The Federation Council called an emergency session. Representatives from all member species gathered on the neutral station Unity, far from any inhabited worlds. The atmosphere was one of barely controlled terror. "We need to understand what we're facing," declared Supreme Commander Vexhai of the Vorthak fleet. His red armor was scratched and dented from battles with the unknown enemy. "My fleets have tried to engage these invaders 6 times. Each time they simply vanish when we approach, then reappear somewhere else to attack defenseless worlds. Our energy shields are useless," reported Counselor Thalara of the crystalline Thalorians. Her body flickered with nervous light patterns. "Their weapons pass through our defenses like they don't exist." "We've tried economic sanctions," added Trade Minister Nexolus of the Nexari. "But you cannot negotiate with something that doesn't want your goods, your services, or even your surrender. They just want you dead." Ambassador Hyunwoo Park sat quietly through most of the discussion, taking notes and listening carefully. When the other representatives had finished their reports, he stood to speak. "Has anyone tried direct communication with these invaders?" he asked. The question caused uncomfortable silence. Finally, Supreme Commander Vexhai answered. "They sent us one message, Ambassador. The same message to all Federation worlds." He activated a holographic display. The message was simple text in every Federation language. "Your galaxy will be cleansed. Your species will be forgotten. Resistance is merely delaying the inevitable. We are the Keth Mori, and we have come to correct the mistake of your existence." More silence followed. Then Counselor Thalara spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "They're not invaders. They're exterminators." Over the following days, intelligence reports painted an increasingly dire picture. The Kethamori possessed technology that seemed to violate natural law. Their ships could phase between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to track or target. Their weapons could kill all life on a planet without damaging the infrastructure, suggesting some form of biological warfare that worked on every known species. Most disturbing were the reports from Dr. Ji-Ho Kang, humanity's leading expert on temporal physics. He had been studying fragments of Kethamori technology recovered from attack sites. "These readings don't make sense," he reported to the Federation Science Council. "The energy signatures suggest technology that's billions of years more advanced than ours. But there's something else. The quantum resonance patterns match theoretical models for time travel." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "I believe the Keth Mori are from our own future. They've traveled back in time, and they know how this galaxy's story ends. For some reason, they've decided that the only way to change that ending is to eliminate all current life." The news broke what remained of Federation unity. The Vorthak pulled their fleets back to protect their home systems. The Nexari began offering massive bribes to anyone who could guarantee safe passage to other galaxies. The Thalorians retreated into their crystal cities and refused all outside communication. Only humanity continued to offer help to everyone. Human medical ships rushed to assist evacuation efforts. Human diplomatic vessels continued to patrol neutral space, helping coordinate refugee movements. Human research stations shared all their data freely with any species that requested it. The other Federation members found this behavior puzzling and somewhat pathetic. Humans seemed to be the only ones who didn't understand that this was the end of galactic civilization. They kept acting like the crisis could be solved through cooperation and goodwill. "The humans are admirable," Supreme Commander Vexhai told his officers, "but they don't understand war. They think everything can be solved with meetings and treaties. They've never faced a real enemy." On Earth, Admiral Minji Choi was reading the same reports that had terrified the rest of the galaxy. But her reaction was very different from theirs. She wasn't panicking or retreating or trying to negotiate. She was calculating. "Dr. Lee," she said to her chief scientist, "how long until you can complete the biological analysis of Kethmori tissue samples?" "We don't have any tissue samples, Admiral," Dr. Lee replied. "They clean up after themselves very thoroughly." "Then get some," Admiral Choi said calmly. "I don't care how you do it, but I need to know how these creatures are built. Their strengths, Their weaknesses, their biological processes, everything. That would require getting close enough to a living Kethmori to take samples, Dr. Lee pointed out. Based on current reports, nothing that gets close to them survives. Admiral Choi smiled, and there was something in that smile that would have made the other Federation species very uncomfortable if they could have seen it. Dr. Lee, she said, it's time you learned the difference between nothing survives getting close to them and nothing has tried to survive getting close to them, yet. She activated her personal communication system and sent a coded message to human ships throughout the galaxy. The message was simple. Begin Phase 2. The observation period is over. Captain Jiwon Kim received the message while her ship was helping evacuate a Nexari civilian convoy. She read it twice, then walked to her secure locker and removed a sealed envelope that had been there for 15 years. Inside were orders she had hoped she would never need to open. The orders were signed by Admiral Choi and dated from the day Captain Kim had first taken command of the Harmony. The first line read, "If you are reading this, it means humanity's patience has reached its limit. As Kethmori forces advance deeper into Federation space, consuming 3 more star systems in a single week, the galaxy prepared for extinction. They had tried everything they knew. Military force, diplomacy, economic pressure, even attempts at surrender. Nothing had worked. But in hidden facilities throughout human space, people were working on solutions that the rest of the galaxy couldn't even imagine, solutions that had been in development for 2 centuries, waiting for the day when humanity's preferred method of peaceful cooperation would no longer be sufficient. The day when patience would end, and the galaxy would learn what humans were, really capable of when they stopped trying to keep the peace and started trying to win a war. Captain Jiwon Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching 2 alien fleets face each other across the dark space between worlds. The Vorthak ships looked like giant metal spears, painted red and covered in weapons. The Nexari vessels were sleek and blue, built for speed and trade rather than war. Both fleets had enough firepower to destroy entire planets, but neither wanted to make the first move. Captain Kim, came a voice through the communication system. It belonged to Admiral Korex of the Vorthak fleet. His words sounded like rocks grinding together. These Nexari traders refuse to leave our space. They claim they have trading rights here. On another channel, Commander Sil Ara of the Nexari responded with her musical voice. Captain Kim, we have legal contracts to mine these asteroids. The Yabi, Vorthak cannot simply claim everything they see. Jiwon sighed quietly. This was the 3rd territorial dispute this month, and it was only the 10th day. She had been doing this job for 15 years, and the pattern never changed. 2 alien species would find something to fight about, both would call in their fleets, and then both would ask humans to solve the problem. Harmony to all ships, Jiwon said calmly. I'm transmitting the Federation legal codes regarding mineral rights and territorial claims. Commander Silara, your contracts are valid, but they don't give you exclusive rights to this entire asteroid field. Admiral Korex, your territorial claim is legal, but it doesn't override existing mining contracts. She paused, letting both sides think about her words. I suggest we divide the asteroid field into 3 sections. The Nexari keep their current mining operations in Section 1. The Vorthak get exclusive rights to Section 2 for their own mining. Section 3 becomes neutral space that both species can use, but only with proper permits filed through the Federation. There was silence for several long minutes. Then Admiral Korex spoke first. This is acceptable to the Vorthak Empire. The Nexari Consortium agrees to these terms, Commander Silara added. Within an hour, both fleets were moving to their new positions. Another war had been prevented with nothing more than words and common sense. Jiwon watched the alien ships separate and felt the familiar mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion that came with successful diplomacy. Another day, another prevented genocide, said her second officer, Lieutenant Minho Chen. The galaxy sure is lucky to have us humans around to keep everyone from killing each other. Jiwon nodded, but she didn't smile. She was thinking about a conversation she had with her father when she first joined the diplomatic service. He had been a military officer before the human policy of peaceful cooperation began. "Remember," he had told her, "there's a difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight. Make sure you always know which one you are." Back on Earth, Ambassador Hyunwoo Park was receiving another medal from the Galactic Federation. This one was made of crystal and changed colors as he held it. It was the Beacon of Peace Award, given to diplomats who had prevented more than 800 conflicts without violence. "Ambassador Park," said the Federation Council leader, a tall creature that looked like a walking tree with too many arms, "your species continues to amaze us. In 200 years of galactic membership, humans have never started a war. You have ended thousands of conflicts through patience and wisdom, alone." Hyunwoo smiled and accepted the award gracefully. Around him, representatives from dozens of alien species clapped and cheered. They all saw humans as the galaxy's natural peacemakers, too gentle and civilized for real violence. What they didn't know was that while Hyunwoo was accepting awards, his reports were being read by very different people in very different places. On a space station hidden in the shadow of Jupiter, Admiral Minji Choi reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Each diplomatic mission sent back detailed information about alien military capabilities, political structures, and technological weaknesses. What looked like peaceful cooperation was actually the most comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history. "How many more species have we fully analyzed?" she asked Dr. Taehyung Lee, who was studying biological samples from their latest humanitarian mission. 47 complete profiles, Dr. Lee replied, not looking up from his microscope. "We know their weapons, their ships, their biology, and their psychology. If we ever needed to neutralize any of them quickly, we could do it in days rather than years." Admiral Choi nodded. "And they still think we're harmless peacekeepers who couldn't hurt a fly." "The Vorthak are particularly amusing," Dr. Lee said with a small smile. "They call us soft children behind our backs. If they only knew that we've identified 17 ways to disable their ships without destroying them, and 12 biological weaknesses that could incapacitate their entire species." Meanwhile, on the frontier world of New Geneva, Commander Seo Jin Yoon was overseeing the construction of what appeared to be a research station. To any alien observer, it looked like another human scientific outpost, dedicated to studying star formation and cosmic radiation. In reality, the station was a weapons testing facility disguised as a research center. The humans had been building these fake science stations throughout the galaxy for decades, always in remote locations, always staffed by harmless researchers who were actually military engineers. "The new shield penetration system is working perfectly," reported her chief, Engineer Lieutenant Jae-hwan Kim. "We can now bypass any known alien defensive technology. The energy signature is so low that their sensors can't even detect the beam until it hits." Commander Yoon made a note in her official log, which would be filed as research into stellar energy patterns. The real information would be sent through encrypted channels back to Earth, where it would join thousands of other research discoveries that were actually military developments. The beautiful thing about the human approach was its simplicity. Every species in the galaxy expected military development to look like military development. They expected weapons factories, military bases, and obvious preparations for war. They never suspected that a medical research station might be studying alien biology to find ways to defeat it, or that a diplomatic cultural exchange might be gathering intelligence about political weaknesses. As Captain Ji-won Kim settled into her quarters after another successful day of peacekeeping, she recorded her daily log entry, another territorial dispute resolved without violence. The Vorthak and Nexari have agreed to share the asteroid field according to Federation law. Total human casualties, 0. Total shots fired, 0. Both alien fleets have withdrawn to safe distances and are already resuming normal trade relations. She paused the recording and looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of known space, long-range sensors had detected something disturbing. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Ships that seemed to move in ways that violated the laws of physics. The unknown. Contact had been designated Kethmori by intelligence services, though no one knew what they actually called themselves. What the sensors had detected suggested a level of technology that made even the most advanced Federation species look primitive by comparison. Jiwan resumed her recording. Personal note. Received classified briefing about unidentified contacts at Galactic Rim. If these new arrivals prove hostile, our current diplomatic approach may not be sufficient. Recommend continued monitoring and preparation of alternative response protocols. She ended the recording and sent it through the encrypted, military channels that no one in the galaxy knew existed. Within hours, her words would be read by Admiral Choi and added to the growing file of intelligence about the mysterious new arrivals. The galaxy slept peacefully that night, protected by human diplomats who had prevented another war through patience and wisdom. None of the alien species suspected that those same human diplomats were quietly preparing for a very different kind of solution, should their patience and wisdom ever prove insufficient. After all, there was a difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight, and humanity had always been very clear about which one they were.